Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we have had so much fun trying out all of the features like Q&As and polls that let us be really creative and engage with our audience. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Podcast Royal. Jessica and I are so happy you're here. We took a nice, relaxing week off for Thanksgiving, but we're back this week with full coverage on the British royal family. We have got a lot to cover this episode, so we're going to jump right into the Royal Rundown, our segment on the royal news of the week. But first of all, Jessica, I wanted to ask you how your Thanksgiving was.
Yeah, it was definitely a different Thanksgiving holiday for me this year, but I really did enjoy the extra time to relax and just take some time to myself. So I normally spend Thanksgiving in Georgia with family, and this year, I had traveled the weekend before, so out of an abundance of caution, I just wanted to stay home. And I ended up actually getting a flat tire the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
No.
It all kind of worked out where I couldn't really travel anyway. But, Thanksgiving is really my favorite meal of the year. So I did still want to enjoy that tradition. And I cooked here. I roasted a turkey breast and made some traditional, Thanksgiving dishes. I'm a Southern girl, so I love casseroles and tried to make it as healthy as possible. But it was really fun to indulge and just, relax a little for the long weekend. So, how
Yeah.
was your Thanksgiving?
It was pretty lame. It was definitely not what I'm used to. So I actually did the same thing. We decided, my family, to do a socially distanced Thanksgiving this year as well. So I did not like that, but what I do like is keeping everyone healthy. And so that is what we felt was right, and we did it, and we just treated it as any other Thursday, and we got through it. And so the hope is that we'll get to be together at Christmas.
Definitely, definitely.
And the Royals had no shortage of news to keep us busy, and a lot of it was really heavy.
Yeah, I felt like, of course, the one week that we decided to take off is the busiest week in
I
royal history
know.
we had in a while.
I know. So because we took last week off, we are recapping the news from November 14th when we recorded episode 1 to today, which today is November 30th. So that is 2 weeks of a lot of news. Some weeks there is not much royal news to dissect, but these 2 weeks were chock full of news. So we're going to start with the heavy stuff at the top and then end with some lighter content so that we don't leave you bummed out when you leave. So we're going to jump right on into it. There's so much to unpack, but I feel like we have to start with Meghan's devastating op-ed in the New York Times last week, where she wrote that she experienced pregnancy loss in July, an experience that unfortunately all too many women go through. In my own life, I have a group chat with 4 of my best friends from home. And if you'll remember, home for me is Kansas. And of those 4 women, 3 of them have experienced pregnancy loss, and 2 of them experienced pregnancy loss this summer. So while I have never been pregnant or attempted to be pregnant, I'm not at that stage in my life yet. Just looking at that microcosm, that focus group right there shows you how often it happens. And I am so proud of Megan for bringing awareness to a topic that for whatever reason is still not very focused on. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the op ed. And I do want to warn you that Megan's poignant and powerful words might be triggering for some of you who have experienced this yourselves. And I do know that there is so many of you. So I might suggest fast forwarding it if it will bring up too much pain for you. So no words I could possibly say could be more moving than Megan's own words. So allow me to read a snippet from the piece called The Losses We Share right now. Megan wrote after changing son Archie's diaper in July of this year, quote, I felt a sharp cramp. I dropped to the floor with him in my arms, humming a lullaby to keep us both calm. The cheerful tune, a stark contrast to my sense that something was not right. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child that I was losing my second. Megan is a really talented writer. Um, I've read lots of her work over the years in different magazines and, of course, on the TIG. And she has a way of capturing that pain so eloquently. So, Megan also wrote of the memory of, if you'll remember, the ITV journalist Tom Bradby, who infamously asked her while she and Harry were on tour in South Africa last year, are you okay? And then, of course, Megan's response was a moment that was criticized so harshly in the media. She was lambasted, she was mocked incessantly for this response. And now Megan kind of tied it all together and wrote in her op-ed as she sat in her hospital bed, quote, watching my husband's heart break as he tried to hold the shattered pieces of mine. I realized that the only way to begin to heal is to first ask, are you okay? So Megan touches on in the op-ed, of course, COVID-19, but also the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd as signposts that in 2020, maybe we aren't okay. And she writes, quote, this year has brought so many of us to our breaking points. Loss and pain have plagued every one of us in 2020 in moments both fraught and debilitating. Now, she also used her piece to provide a platform for those who've experienced pregnancy loss. And she writes, quote, losing a child means carrying an almost unbearable grief, experienced by many but talked about by few. In the pain of our loss, my husband and I discovered that in a room of 100 women, 10 to 20 of them will have suffered from miscarriage. Yet, despite the staggering commonality of this pain, the conversation remains taboo, riddled with unwarranted shame and perpetuating a cycle of solitary mourning. Through all this, Megan still has the courage and bravery to close her op-ed with optimism, writing, quote, some have bravely shared their stories. They have opened the door, knowing that when one person speaks truth, it gives license for all of us to do the same. We have learned that when people ask how any of us are doing, and when they really listen to the answer with an open heart and mind, the load of grief often becomes lighter for all of us. In being invited to share our pain, together we take the first steps towards healing. Are we okay? We will be. So I am the editor of What Megan Wore, and I was so moved by Megan's op-ed that I wrote an editor's letter about it. And if you'd like to read it, feel free to go to whatmeganwore.net. And basically, Jessica, I cannot express how much courage that must have taken, especially because anything Megan does is mocked and criticized, I feel like. And for her, she didn't owe us anything, right? Like she did not owe us that depth of feeling and that vulnerability. But I'd love to know your thoughts on it, Jessica.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to say it's so heartbreaking to hear the news of their miscarriage. And unfortunately, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
I think, you know, like you said, everyone listening has either experienced it firsthand or knows someone who has. And I really feel for the Sussexes for having to go through that as a family. And it's interesting because you mentioned she chose to write about it and to share that part of her life with us. It's very personal. We know that typically the royal family does not always share personal parts of their lives. And it actually made me wonder who else in the royal family may have experienced something like that we
Yeah.
don't know about, because they have not talked about it yet.
You
Um,
said something to me that has stuck with me since we were texting about it on Wednesday of last week when the op-ed broke. You said that you didn't think she would have been able to share that if she were still a full-time working member, a senior member as they call it, of the royal
mhm.
family. And I agree with you. I don't think that the press offices of Buckingham Palace would have let that happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think since they've stepped back from those roles and they've distanced themselves a little bit, they have a lot more freedom to share those parts of their story, and it is more on their terms. I do wonder why she chose to reference the "Are you okay?" question, given that it was so controversial.
Mhm.
It was certainly fitting for this piece. But knowing the response that she got when they were on tour, I wonder why she chose to bring it up again. And I don't know if it's to emphasize why it's important to ask that question, or if she wanted to point out the fact that at this point in her life, she's actually able to answer honestly and openly how she's doing.
I almost wonder if it's like she's reclaiming that moment that kind of just went so out of control and she was so mocked for. And it's almost like she's grabbing it by both hands and taking it back and saying, I'm reclaiming this. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of the way I reacted with emotion. And I can't say enough how brave I think it was for her to share this, and how thankful I am that she's bringing light to an issue that is so it's so under talked about, if you will. I mean, I have never experienced this myself and I hope I never do, but just looking at the focus group of 5 women, 4 plus me, and that 3 of them have experienced this tells you how common this really is. And so I hope, if nothing else comes out of this, that women that have experienced this just feel like they're not alone.
Absolutely.
So that was the Sussexes tend to break news right before so the day that they stepped down from the royal family, January 8th, I was flying out of the country. And was scrambling to get something together and I just couldn't. And then the day before Thanksgiving. And so honestly, like, I'm too much of an empath, so I spent Thanksgiving, first of all, this Thanksgiving was hard anyway, being socially distanced from my family. And then with this news, and then I was writing about it, and it was just a heavy Thanksgiving. But you know what, Megan, you can be vulnerable whenever you want, but it was the day before a holiday. So continuing on with the upsetting news, keeping it real light and fluffy on the podcast this week. I was also really sad to hear, since we spoke on the podcast last, that the Cambridge's dog Lupo passed away at the age of 9. I
I know.
love animals, I love dogs, and I hate to see a family lose a family pet, especially children. Of course, Lupo's been around for the entirety of George, Charlotte, and Louis's lives. So Lupo was an English Cocker Spaniel. He was given to William and Kate by Kate's brother, James Middleton. And on Kensington Royal's Instagram, the Cambridges wrote, "Very sadly, last weekend, our dear dog Lupo passed away. He has been at the heart of our family for the past 9 years, and we will miss him so much." So I don't have a dog right now. We lost our family dog in 2013 in a tragic way. And honestly, I haven't been able to get another pet since then because it shook me so much. Um, Riley was his name. He was only 5. Jessica, you have Edison, and so you have a dog who's adorable. You love him. So, um, again, having this happen right around the holidays, it's never there's never a good time to lose a family pet. But how do you think the Cambridges are dealing with it? How do you think they're how do you think the kids are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I was so sad to hear this story. He was such a beautiful dog, and like you mentioned, I'm a dog lover, and I've got one myself, and he's been in my life for 10 years, and they really are a member of your family. I mean, it feels like, he's my child,
Yeah.
so I can't help but feel for them. I know that he was close, a close member of their family. We've seen him in photos over the years. And I imagine it's tough with kids, when you grow up and you have a dog in your life from birth, you have someone to snuggle with or share a treat with. And I think with kids, it can be hard to process that. So I definitely think that they're feeling a void.
It just seems like the whole family is the family of dog people. So do you think that they'll get another dog soon?
I definitely do. I think that we'll probably see them with a family dog over the years. I think that they'll probably always have a pet. So,
Yeah.
and I was going to ask you, do you know what Lupo means?
Okay, at one point I did. So I know that Harry and Meghan's dog is named after the Botswanan currency, but sounds like you know what Lupo means. So what does it mean?
It means wolf.
Oh, in what language?
I couldn't tell you that. I would have to look that up. But
Interesting.
I was reading about it this week, and apparently the palace staff were very secretive about the name Lupo when they first got the dog, out of respect for privacy for the Cambridges.
Uh-huh.
And then Kate ultimately revealed the name in a public engagement that she was doing, and they talked about the meaning of the name. So I thought that was kind of cute.
Interesting. He was a beautiful dog. So rest in peace, Lupo. I know I speak for Jessica when I say we consider our animals like family. So I know the Cambridges likely do as well. So we're our hearts go out to them as well. So the hits just keep on coming. We just are on a really depressing train this week. So The Crown season 4, we recorded episode 1 on November 14th, the day before season 4 was released on November 15th. I watched it in one day. Where are you at it, Jessica? Are you finished yet?
I have finished, yes.
Oh, okay. So we'll talk about thoughts at the end. We're not gonna give any spoilers away for those of you that have more self-control than I do and are parsing it out. But I will say that this is the so-called Charles and Diana season, and it does not disappoint. So while, as Jessica said on our last episode, this is a Hollywood depiction of the events of the late 1970s to the late 1980s, early 1990s. I think it stops in the year 1990, actually. The vast majority of it is true. And actually, in some cases, it's even worse in real life than on Netflix. They left out some particularly harrowing parts of the War on the Waleses, which is what the press called Charles and Diana's troubled marriage, including Diana flinging herself down the stairs while pregnant with William because she was so distraught. For whatever reason, they also left out scenes of Charles and Diana's actual wedding. So, for one of our segments today, I'd like to take a moment to share some factoids about that day, July 29th, 1981. So, on this day, Charles, Prince of Wales, 32, married Lady Diana Spencer, who had just turned, this is just shocking to me still, who had just turned 20 earlier in the month. Look, I am 34 years old. I'm still not married yet. I feel like I'm just now at a place where I could be a good wife. I was definitely not wife material at basically 19 years old. Her birthday's July 1st. They got married on July 29th. So she wasn't even a month into her 20th year. So I was not born yet on Wednesday, July 29th, 1981, but millions of Americans, including my mom, hi mom, tuned in to watch the fairy tale unfold. In fact, 750 million watched from around the world. So while the marriage was less than stellar, the wedding was spectacular. So here's a few facts about the event that you might not know. It took place at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and it was declared a national holiday, much like William and Kate's wedding was in 2011. Charles and Diana chose St. Paul's over Westminster Abbey because it offered more seating. There were 3,500 people in attendance. So just a small family wedding, right? Including Charles's ex and later mistress and now wife, Camilla Parker Bowles, who Diana spotted as she walked down the aisle. Obviously, if you've seen The Crown, very much knowing who she was and her place in her husband's life. The cost of the wedding is estimated at $48 million in 1981 dollars. So that translates to between 70 and $110 million today. And over $600,000 was spent on security alone. The carriage that held Diana and her father, John Spencer, was too small to hold the two of them in Diana's massive dress. That train, okay? We'll talk about the train in just a second. Now, it took Diana 3.5 minutes to walk down the aisle. If you've ever waited on something in the microwave for a minute, you know how long that is. She was walking down the aisle for 3.5 minutes. So when she was saying her vows, Diana was petrified. You can see the look on her face when you watch video of the wedding. So Diana flubbed the order of her husband's name. She said Philip Charles Arthur George instead of Charles Philip Arthur George. So she actually married a guy named Philip, which of course is her father-in-law. So that's interesting. You can watch this if you can YouTube this. Just type in Charles and Diana's wedding and you can see her mess up her. She's so nervous she messed up her husband's own name. And Charles messed up too when he was taking his vows. He vowed to offer her thy goods instead of my worldly goods. So he basically said in his vows, I'll give you your goods. I'm not giving you mine. Controversially at the time, Diana refused to say that she would obey Charles in her vows. This caused a huge stir at the time. And I think that's kind of a cool girl power moment. So Diana's dress, it was designed by brother and sister team Elizabeth and David Emanuel. In 1981 pounds, it was valued at 9,000 pounds, which is roughly 34,750 pounds today. A lot of money for that dress. It was made of ivory silk taffeta and decorated with lace, hand embroidery, sequins, and 10,000 pearls. A lot of pearls. So
Wow.
because of um, this is kind of touched on in The Crown. It talks about Diana's struggles with an eating disorder, but because of bridal nerves and her rampant eating disorder, Diana's dress had to be taken in from a 27-inch waist to a 23-inch waist before the wedding. She had lost so much weight. Her dress had a hidden good luck charm, an 18-karat gold horseshoe trinket adorned with white diamonds. Now, I told you a minute ago I'd talk about the train. The train of the dress was a whopping 25 feet, fulfilling Diana's wish to have the longest train in royal wedding history. I'm pretty sure that still has not been topped. As many royal weddings as there have been since then, because I know Kate's wasn't that long. Meghan's was long, her veil was long, but I don't think it was 25 feet. So y'all can fact check me on this, but I don't think that it has been duplicated. Diana wore her family's heirloom tiara, which I love. The Spencer tiara is my favorite tiara ever. She also wore an ivory silk tulle veil and low-heeled shoes with, I like this detail, with C and D hand painted on the arches. I think I'm going to steal that from my wedding. Okay, this is the funniest detail to me, and I'm going to butcher the name of this perfume, so I'm just telling y'all that right now. Diana wore Quellquist Floors by this I can't even by Home Yacht Parfum. I'm sorry, you can just look it up, Google it. The oldest French fragrance company, and this is so like what happens when you are you're marrying the wrong guy. You're nervous, you're 20 years old. In her jitters while putting the perfume on, she spilled the perfume all over herself and the dress. Now, if you know that knowledge and you go back and you watch the royal wedding, you can spot her trying to cover the stain up during the ceremony with her flowers. When I found that out, I went back and watched it, and sure enough, she is holding her hands. She's holding her bouquet very awkwardly, and it's because she literally spilled the entire bottle of perfume all over herself. I can only imagine what she smelled like. I wonder if
Well,
it was just like you could probably smell her from the other side of London. So
I didn't actually know that story, but I did know that I guess mishaps at weddings are a common theme among the
yeah,
royals because Queen Elizabeth actually broke her tiara the day of her
I
wedding.
didn't know that. She
They
broke
made
her tiara?
She broke it, yeah, and they managed to
No.
put it back together before the wedding.
I didn't know that. Okay, well, speaking of the queen, so Diana had two identical wedding bouquets because the queen insisted, because at her own wedding, Her Majesty lost her bouquet and didn't want the same thing to happen to her daughter in law. So apparently, the queen had some mishaps at her wedding in 1947. So after the ceremony, 120 guests went to Buckingham Palace for a wedding breakfast. And upon appearing on the palace balcony to greet well wishers, the couple kissed, thereby starting that tradition. And do you know, Jessica, the reason why they kissed on the balcony?
I don't think that I do.
So they forgot to kiss at the church. They
Oh,
you know how when the priest or the preacher or whatever announces you husband and wife, you kiss? Well, they didn't do it. They forgot. They were so nervous. And I mean, I can't imagine getting married in front of 750 million people, you know? And so they forgot to kiss at the ceremony at St. Paul's Cathedral, so they did it on the balcony. And then of course we've seen Kate and William do it since then. Harry and Meghan didn't do it on the balcony, but they did it on the steps of St. George's Chapel. So they started that tradition in 1981. Fergie and Andrew kissed on the balcony in 1986 when they got married. And the last factoid I'll share is the couple had 27 wedding cakes, one of which weighed 225 pounds. So, thoughts on all of this knowledge, Jessica?
well, we know the 80s was really a decade of abundance.
That's so
People
true.
just went over the top with the frills and the ruffles and
Yes.
everything. So it's right on par with the style of that decade.
It was
Um,
definitely opulent. It was a fairy tale.
so one thought that I had on that was I'm really actually surprised Diana. Oh, I mean, I don't know what say she had over this, but I'm surprised that she allowed Camilla to be invited to the wedding.
I'm not
Um,
sure she allowed that. I think that was a Charles thing.
I mean, she knew even before they got married that there was
Oh yeah.
something going on there. Um, so that, that's really unfortunate.
Can you
And then
even imagine? Can you even imagine walking down the aisle and seeing the woman that is, first of all, your husband's ex, but not really even his ex? He's still very much, if not physically involved with her, emotionally involved with her. This is the woman, we're going to talk about this in a minute on the podcast, but this is a woman who he should have married all along. They should have ended up together in the beginning, and it probably would have caused a lot of people a lot less heartbreak. But um, the gall of Camilla to attend and for her to be invited. Now, Camilla was a part of that set, that social set. So, by virtue of association, she would have been invited, but to attend, even I would think that would be hard on Camilla to watch the man
right,
you really love get married to someone else. I wouldn't want to be there,
the
even if
whole
I
thing
was
was
in that position.
the whole thing is just a little strange, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would have thought that there would have been enough people in the royal family that were aware of the situation and would
Yeah.
have done something to prevent that. But either way,
I wonder why they didn't show the wedding. They showed the rehearsal, but they didn't show the wedding on The Crown. And I wonder why that is. Maybe it just came down to production costs that it would. I mean, I just told you how much that wedding cost. I don't know. I was there. They touched on some really high point, like, and by high points I don't mean happy points, but like important points of the 1980s. But they also left some things out that I think people that know the story and lived the story would have said, I wonder why they left that out.
that's probably one part of Charles and Diana's relationship that the vast majority of people are aware of
Yeah.
and about. So I don't know why they
If
didn't
you
read.
know nothing else about Charles and Diana, I'm pretty sure that you knew about the wedding and you probably watched it or you at least saw coverage of it. Again, Jessica and I were not alive yet, but it was quite, if we think that William and Kate's wedding or Harry and Meghan's wedding was a big deal, take that times a million for this really was supposed to be the fairy tale. And I even think that the priest at the ceremony said this is the stuff of which fairy tales are made. The the hope of that marriage and knowing how it turns out is very hard to watch. So, all right, some
Mhm.
other thoughts I have on The Crown season 4. It was incredibly well done and entertaining. And let me tell you, in profile, Emma Corrin, the actress that plays Diana, looks so much like her that it
Mhm.
is eerie. Now, from front on, give or take, sometimes, but in profile, she looks exactly like her. She also sounds exactly like her. She nailed Diana's accent. And oh my gosh, Gillian Anderson as Margaret Thatcher. Give her all the Emmys. That is so Emmy worthy. I just can't imagine anybody else winning the Emmy but her. And of course, the Charles and Camilla plotline continues into season 4 from season 3. So I'm going to share something I wrote. This is in part, I'm not going to share the whole thing, it's long enough as it is. Something I wrote about these two called Charles and Camilla, I Forgive You, so that you can know how I feel about this issue. And then Jessica and I are going to unpack it. Charles at 32 is being pushed, read, forced to get on with this marriage thing and do one of the major duties he was assigned at birth as an heir to the British throne, produce more heirs, and ensure the longevity of the monarchy. Not only was he being forced to settle down, but his bride, the Princess of Wales, couldn't be just anyone. She had to be British. She had to be aristocratic and from royal blood, not royal blood like the royal family, but, aristocratic blue blood. She had to have never been married, and oh, yeah, she had to be a virgin. That is true. Back in 1981, the Princess of Wales had to be a virgin. That's so archaic. Not to mention, she had to be willing to take on the often daunting prospect of everyone in the world knowing who she was. That woman would be damn near impossible to find in 2020, and it was in 1982. 1980, comma TOO, not 1982, the year. Just clarifying that. That's why when Charles found a suitable bride, he locked her down after only about 6 months of dating and asked for her hand in marriage in February 1981. He and Diana were married, as I said earlier, on July 29th of that same year, having only known one another in a romantic sense for less than a year. And this gets me, having only been in the same room and not just talking on the phone 13 times. These two barely knew each other. I look at Diana, so beautiful, walking down the aisle to get married, and I don't see happiness. As I just said, I see a lamb being led to the slaughter. Charles didn't love her, he barely knew her. And she, at barely 20, was just a young kid in love, caught up in the idea of marrying her Prince Charming. And we wonder why this thing went to hell so quickly. In actuality, Charles met his soulmate, Camilla Shand, in 1971 when he was 22. Camilla had just broken up with Andrew Parker Bowles, who she would later end up marrying. Wait for it. And Andrew was actually, weirdly enough, if you watch The Crown season 3, courting Charles's younger sister, Princess Anne. Charles and Camilla became the best of friends. They shared so many interests in common. From the start, Charles felt comfortable around her, and he so rarely felt comfortable around anyone. Eventually, they began dating rather seriously. Then Charles, a member of the Royal Navy, went overseas to serve in early 1973. Charles made the mistake of not formally asking Camilla to wait for him, and Camilla, a woman driven towards what she wants, married her ex-boyfriend Andrew Parker Bowles while Charles was still abroad. When Charles found out that Camilla had married Andrew, he was leveled, devastated, and he was crushed. She was and always would be the love of his life. He wrote in a letter at the time to Lord Louis Mountbatten, his great uncle, mentor, his honorary grandfather, and the only elder who could ever give him the paternal love he so desperately desired, who is featured prominently and tragically in this season of The Crown. He wrote to him, "I suppose the feeling of emptiness will pass eventually." It wouldn't have mattered. There was no way the royal establishment would have approved a Charles and Camilla marriage at that time anyway. She was certainly not a virgin, not that it matters, but it did back then, and wasn't nearly as blue blooded as she needed to be. After Lord Mountbatten, the one person Charles could turn to about anything, was assassinated in August 1979, he turned to Camilla for emotional support that was impossible to find within his own family. They purportedly rekindled their romance then and, off and on to the present day, never stopped. But Camilla was married, and even if she divorced Andrew in 1980, it was still a no go to marry a divorcee, especially the Prince of Wales, the direct heir to the British throne, which is why, by the way, it's such a big deal that Harry, even though he's not the heir, was allowed to marry Meghan, who is a divorcee. Charles proposed to other women and they all declined. Then in 1980, he looked at the younger sister of Sarah Spencer, a girl Charles used to date, who by now is Sarah McCorquodale, having gotten married herself in 1980, a little bit differently. Diana was 13 years younger than him and only 19. Diana Spencer possessed one thing that at the time captivated him, but years later he would come to despise about her. She was an emotional person too. While sitting on a bale of hay at a friend's barbecue in July 1980, Charles mentioned how shaken up he still was about Lord Mountbatten's brutal murder. Diana, a caretaker, a classic middle child, and a peacemaker, told Charles that he looked like he needed someone to care for him. That was really all it took for Charles to see this woman, who checked all of the boxes needed to make a royal bride, as his wife. He might have loved her, but he was not in love with her. She was in love with him, but in the way that youth and inexperience and the fascination of a fairy tale makes a little girl love a grown man. I think she thought, as so many of us women incorrectly have, that he could save her. When they got engaged in February 1981, she looked smitten. He says his famous line in their engagement interview after asking if he was in love, whatever in love means. They married 5 months later. As we just talked about on the podcast, Camilla was in the audience at Charles and Diana's wedding. She never fully left the picture, ever. There would be breaks where Charles would try to be a good husband and try to uphold his vows, but it never lasted. As Diana once famously said, well, there were three of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. By the time Harry was a newborn in late 1984, the Wales' marriage had irretrievably fallen apart. Charles was back with Camilla and Diana had affairs of her own. They tried to keep a good face for the public and the press, but just look at photographs of them in the late 80s and early 90s. They really grew to resent one another. Eventually, the pressure got to be too much and they separated in 1992 and divorced in 1996. Diana died in 1997, of course. And after his divorce, Charles declared to his mother, the Queen, that his relationship with Camilla was a non negotiable, and they were introduced to the public as a couple in 1999. They married in 2005, by the way. So now at 72, Charles has long settled into his professional role. He's been the Prince of Wales since birth and has been in training for the top job since he can remember. He's finally at peace in his personal life. His sons have fully accepted Camilla, so why shouldn't I? I guess it's still hard for me to say. The inevitable truth is that Charles is going to be king, Camilla is going to be queen consort. They are happy, they're in love, and we gain nothing by not accepting what is as what is. So I am inhaling pot. This is very still hard for me to do, by the way, especially after watching season 4 of The Crown, where all of these feelings of hatred towards Camilla and Charles, for that matter, came back up, as I'm sure it was for many of you. But I am inhaling positivity, exhaling negativity, and with it, exhaling my negative feelings, or I'm trying to, towards the Prince of Wales. Charles, while a future king, you are just a man. Your mistakes are yours and not any other man's. That will no longer make you the symbol for every love gone wrong, but you're still a jerk. Just saying. I will see your life for the complex, often unhappy, often unfulfilling journey it has been and be thankful for you, my fellow human. These words are like vinegar to say that you have finally found peace, happiness, and love in a world that seems to be increasingly scarce at doling out all of the above. So I'm really trying to let my grudge go here and wish them well, because your success as king is all of our success. And I wish you nothing but peace, happiness, and love for you, me, and all of us. I'm saying these words that I wrote last year whenever I wrote them, and I'm trying to believe them. I finally realized in my increasing maturity that loving Diana and respecting you do not have to be mutually exclusive. It's taken me 34 years to say this, but Charles and Camilla, whew, I forgive you and I wish you well. But I still think what you did was wrong. So unpack that one, Jessica.
There's a lot to unpack there. You mentioned he approached his mother and said their relationship was a non-negotiable, and I wonder how that would have gone if he had done that before Diana.
Yeah,
You know, I want to think that Queen Elizabeth would have ultimately given her blessing if he had done that. And, given what we know about Princess Margaret and Peter Townsend and their love, and now Charles and Camilla, I think those are reasons why Queen Elizabeth did give Harry and Meghan her approval.
I agree.
I don't think she wanted to stand in the way of love. And I think in her many years and, of life and all that she's experienced, she knew, if two people love each other, you have to honor that, or, look what happens when you don't.
Yeah, I
So
agree. It's just so, it just never should have happened. I mean, I'm so glad, obviously, that Charles and Diana married and they had William and Harry, but it just should have been them from the start. And I think a lot of hearts would be saved. Diana might very well still be alive. We don't know. We can't speculate, but it's just heartbreaking. And it's so heartbreaking to see someone try so hard to win the love of the wrong man. And not only to do that, and I mean, hell, I've been there in my own personal life, but I haven't done it on the global stage when I was 20, you know? And so it's just, it's hard to watch. And the hardest part is that it's all true. And so season 5 is going to be, because they tend on The Crown to do seasons in 10-year blocks. So this next season will be 1990 to 2000, which of course will be their separation in 1992, their divorce in 1996, her death in 1997. So it's just going to be so heavy. But last thoughts from you on season 4 of The Crown. What did you think?
Well, I was definitely sucked into every scene with Princess Diana.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the recreations of her outfits.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them I thought, wow, these are like almost more pretty than the real outfit itself. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they did a really great job. Um, and it really just made me think about their relationship on a deeper level. Right after I finished season 4, I went on and watched Diana in her own words on Netflix.
Yeah.
And it just really confirmed some of what was depicted in The Crown, to hear it in her own voice. But again, they do preface um, that film with saying that these interviews that they did with Diana were at a low point in her marriage. And I think we also have to recognize that it is one side of the story. And Charles, really, given his role, is unable to comment on his perspective.
Yeah.
So, I think we have to take that into account too. And I think it's just really tough for everyone. And I don't know who in the royal family watches The Crown, or if they watch it at all, but I can imagine that's got to be really difficult for William and Harry to have those personal parts of their family and their own lives on display in that way.
So I have 3 things to say about that. First of all, it has been confirmed that Zara's husband, Mike Tyndall, watches The Crown, and I bet he's not alone.
I've heard from several sources as well that people think Camilla actually watches.
Oh, I've heard that too. And God, how hard would that be to watch yourself be portrayed in that way? But secondly, I read today actually that the royal family was asked to fact check The Crown, to preview it, and
Oh,
they
wow.
declined. They declined.
I mean, I think that ties back into Charles not being able to talk. We know the royal family's motto is never complain, never explain. And I
Yeah,
think it's honestly probably the best to let people imagine what they will and keep private what's private.
I wonder what the feeling. I Do British people watch The Crown? I mean, I assume they do, but I wonder. I mean, I guess a lot of people lived this, but I wonder what the general feeling now that this season is out about Charles and Camilla is right now amongst the British public.
Yeah, I don't know. I've wondered that as well. Yeah, he's, definitely, I feel like we're ripping the bandage off of some old wounds and kind of
Yeah,
reopening them again. Yeah, I mean, I think because Charles has been in this role as prince for so long, Camilla has really kind of been in the background, and we've seen her recently step up and make more public appearances and step into more duties in her role. And I think I sort of feel like the public forgot for a little while that she will actually be queen consort one day.
which still, I'm
And
gonna be honest with you, makes me sick. I just can't. Like,
me too, me too.
it's not even that I want, I mean, of course I want Diana to be alive, but it's not even that I want Diana to be queen. It's just that I don't want her to be queen consort. Like I just can't I just can't get fully over this. And like I don't know if I ever will, and I just need to get over myself. I don't know these people personally, but it like if William and Harry can be so accepting of her, which they always have been, and I think that shows an enormous amount of emotional maturity on their part. If they could get over it, then really truly accept her, like not regard her as the evil stepmother, but really like her, then I need to get over it. But I just cannot quite wrap my head around that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel right. And, Diana even said in an interview if she could have it her way, that Charles would go off with his lady
Yep,
and leave her and the boys to carry on the Wales family name.
yep,
So, we think about that. And, I mean, to your point earlier, what happened and cannot be changed. But I do still feel upset with how Charles handled the situation.
yeah,
Regardless of what had gone on with him and Camilla in the past, I think when you make that decision to marry someone, you've got to move forward and honor that. And I sort of feel like he never gave it a fair chance with Diana
yeah,
because he never fully cut off Camilla. And it wasn't really fair for her.
yeah. Everybody lost. Everybody lost in that situation. My final thought on The Crown is this. Of course, we know that The Crown is on Netflix, and Harry and Meghan, of course, just signed this $150 million deal with Netflix. Is that weird? Is that a conflict of interest? Because this show that so brazenly depicts his parents. Like this isn't even, I mean, now we're to the point in the show where we're not even talking about his grandmother. I mean, we are of course, but like we're talking about his parents, and there's shots in there of him in there. So is that weird? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is weird. I guess I don't know what what this contract entails
Yeah,
and what they'll be doing. I'll be interested to see that. You may know more about that than I do,
I don't
but
know anything about it.
um, but yeah, no, it definitely brings some thoughts to question. And I'm not. I mean, I guess they're allowed to do that now.
We shall see. Okay, go watch The Crown season 4 if you haven't. It's really good. It was my favorite season so far because you just can't beat the juice of Charles and Diana. So okay, depressing time over. We're going to move on to the end of the rundown on some good news. So Kate is thriving in her work, revealing the results of her 5 big questions survey after nearly 1 million people responded to it. This is the work of Kate's life. These results will help shape the work of her going forward as it relates to early childhood development, which of course is her passion project, and how it impacts the rest of our lives. This is also a lead up, according to Kensington Palace, to 2021 seeing the Duchess announce, quote, ambitious plans to help elevate the importance of early childhood, end quote. So these are my words now. This is, as I said, truly the work of Kate's life. She should be immensely proud of herself. So here are some key findings from the report according to Harper's Bazaar. Exactly 98% of survey participants believe that a child's future is not predetermined at birth and that nurture is essential to lifelong outcomes. However, only 1 in 4 recognize the importance of the first 5 years of a child's life. The reality of life makes it difficult for parents to prioritize their well being. 90% of people see parental mental health and well being as critical to a child's development, but only 10% of parents mentioned taking the time to look after their own mental well being when asked how they had prepared for the arrival of a baby. Worryingly, the survey results shared by Kensington Palace reveal over a third of all parents, 37%, expect the COVID-19 pandemic to have a negative impact on their long term mental well being, which is worrying but not shocking. 70% of parents feel judged by others, and half of those admit that it negatively impacts their mental health. I've seen that amongst my friends that are parents. Parental loneliness has increased during the pandemic from 38% to 63% due to being cut off from friends and family. The increase in loneliness for parents is more apparent in deprived areas. And finally, across the UK, 40% of parents feel that community support has grown substantially during the pandemic, although this is 7% lower in the most deprived areas. So, way to go, Kate. We are proud of you. We can't wait to see what's to come from this. And more happy news. People Magazine's Sexiest Royal Alive list for 2020 is in, and the top spot goes to none other than Prince Harry,
Yay.
who took over for his brother, Prince William, who nabbed the top spot last year. So William was a runner up, as was Prince Felix of Luxembourg. My personal crush object, Prince Carl Philip of Sweden. He is so fine. Truly a sight to behold. Please get on your phone and Google Prince Carl Philip of Sweden right now. You will not be disappointed. And finally, Prince Mateen of Brunei. And my last item on the rundown today is the annual list of hardest working royals compiled by Britain's Press Association. Should be out soon. It usually comes out in the early to mid part of December. Of course, this year is going to be a strange year with COVID, but I wonder how everyone will fare. So, for comparison's sake, last year in 2019, the hardest working royal for the third year in a row was our friend Princess Anne with 167 days worked. Her brother and heir to the throne, Charles, came in second with 125 days worked. For comparison's sake, the Queen worked 67 days, which was 4 more than in 2018. And on the whole, the family worked an average of 84.5 days in 2019, or about a third of the 253 working days in the UK. Now, this information is obtained from records of the monarchy's official engagements recorded in the court circular, which you can Google. Anybody can have access to it. However, some family members do carry out private engagements that support their public work. So that kind of stuff does not make the court circular, but you can go to the royal family's media center and see all of this stuff. So, okay, rundown is over. This was a heavy week for me on the news commentary side. Hopefully we ended it on a positive note. Hopefully this week will be lighter on the depressing news, and next week I will be back to share the Christmas traditions of Sandringham, which of course will be a little bit different this year, but we can still look back on Christmases of yore and smile. So with that, I'm turning it over to you, my friend.
Yeah, and before I jump into my segment, I had two little updates that I wanted to share that just kind of I
Yeah,
came across this week and took a note to share this. So, you mentioned Prince Carl Philip of Sweden.
love of my life.
He and his wife, Princess Sophia, actually both tested positive for COVID.
Yes, I heard that. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because their last engagement that they had attended prior to testing positive was a funeral they had been to together. But the interesting thing was everyone who attended the funeral had to have a negative COVID test before they could go.
Huh.
So, it's kind of funny how this thing works. We don't really understand, sometimes symptoms show up later. But they're going through contact tracing and trying to make sure that they check everyone who may have come in contact with them. But the good news here is Carl, Philip, and Sophia are both feeling well overall. I think
Oh,
they've got
good.
very mild symptoms. And to our listeners, if you're not familiar with Prince Carl Philip, he is fourth in line to the throne in Sweden. He and Princess Sophia have two sons, ages 4 and 3. And Princess Sophia has actually been really involved with the fight against COVID this year. So earlier this year, she did an online course to help get her prepared to volunteer in hospitals in Sweden. And she actually got suited up and was volunteering at a hospital where she's an honorary chair earlier this year. So good job to her for her work. And we wish them well and hope that they recover
We're
very
for
quickly.
sure going to cover the royal family of Sweden at some point because they are beautiful. So there's three siblings. There's Carl Philip, then there's Victoria and Madeline, and they, I mean, just these are just beautiful people, like just
Yes, I
so
love
beautiful.
their whole family.
And also Monaco. We like the Monaco royal family too, and Luxembourg. So this is a British royal family podcast, but we're gonna talk about the other fams too.
And my other update is what I think is the most interesting news of the week. And I'm sure you probably saw this, Rachel. So Eugenie and Jack Brooksbank have moved into
Oh
Frogmore
my
Cottage.
gosh. Jessica, I I spaced that. Thank God for you. I completely forgot that. Hello. Yes. Oh my gosh. Massive fail as a news commentator. Yes, Eugenie and Jack have moved into Harry and Meghan's old pad, old little tiny shack. Just kidding. Frogmore Cottage.
Yeah, so I did a little digging on this. It initially caught my eye and I was super curious. So, you may remember Harry and Meghan initially spent a couple million at least in
Yeah.
renovations of Frogmore Cottage. And so I was kind of curious, what may have sparked the move of Eugenie and Jack into the home. So what we know is prior to this, they were living on the grounds of Kensington Palace in London. So Frogmore Cottage is in Windsor. It's a little bit of a commute, so it gives them a little more privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also only 4 miles from Eugenie's parents and her childhood home. Um, we also know that she's expecting, and the renovations that were done at Frogmore Cottage included a nursery installation
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of landscaping work just to help make it more accommodating for a family with young children. So, Frogmore Cottage is a 5 bedroom home. So, I think that sounds like a really good option for Eugenie and Jack with a new baby. We know that she's close to Prince Harry, and I think it'll be a great way for them to welcome the baby and start their young family in this home since Harry and Meghan are now relocated to California. And, a lot of people, after hearing this story, feel like this is further confirmation that they really probably don't have plans to go back to Britain anytime soon.
Which shocks no one probably. I mean, their 1 year anniversary of the step down is coming up very quickly. And, if you'll remember, they did the 12-month and then we'll reassess. But I mean, obviously, I think this move is total proof that they're not coming back anytime soon. So
Right.
good for them for living there and making it so it's not just collecting dust. It's a beautiful home. And um, of course, Eugenie is giving birth in early 2021. So hopefully that will be the home where they raise many little babies, many little Brooksbank babies.
Okay, so we'll jump into this last segment of this episode. I have gathered a royally inspired Christmas gift guide for our listeners. So I've put together 10 items and one bonus item, and these are just things that give some sort of inspiration from the royal family that maybe you want to add to your list of gift ideas for others, or maybe you want to add this to your own wish list. So we'll get started. The first item on this list is a book on the royals. So 2020 was really quite a big year for new royal books. We saw quite a few come out, and I have looked into a couple myself. And the two that I put on my list as recommendations are Battle of Brothers by Robert Lacey. Rachel and I, we both read that one. So that's a good read if you have someone who really just enjoys reading and they want to learn more. Then the other option is HRH, So Many Thoughts on Royal Style by Elizabeth Holmes. This one just came out this past week, and
Which
I was
you'll get it
actually
the next time I see you, by the way. So Jessica and I, it's snowing in Alabama today, which is very weird. So we're recording this from two separate locations. You were going to get it tonight, but you'll get it next week.
that sounds good. So I actually this past weekend went on a little hunt to see if I could find the HRH book, to see how readily available it was. With everything that I've seen buzzing about it on social media, I expected it to be front and center, and I was really surprised when I went in Barnes and Noble. I had a hard time finding it. I
Hmm,
actually circled the aisles a couple times and got someone to help me. And I did end up finding it. They had it on a shelf there. They actually don't have it on shelves at our local Target, Rachel.
really?
They have it on the app. So if you're looking to buy this for a gift, my recommendation is to shop the Target app. As far as price point concerns go, you will get a better deal going through the Target app. So
It's on the bestseller list, so I'm surprised it's not more prominently displayed at Barnes and Noble.
yeah, I was too. Yeah. So all right. Item number two is and I'll go ahead and just say right off the bat, this is a splurge item. Um, Item number two is a Strawberry handbag.
Hmm.
So these bags are pricey, but they are very pretty handbags, very classic. Megan has been seen wearing these a couple of different times, and the first time we saw her wear a Strawberry handbag was in 2017 on her first royal engagement, and that's really when they started gaining popularity. I think the styles that she has been seen carrying range from $600 to $800. So, I mean, they're a pretty big splurge. And the one thing I will say about this bag, because they are so unique in their style, it's really hard to find an affordable dupe of this bag. It's just got such a unique look with the gold bar for the closure and the handles. It's very structured and sleek. So I do recommend, if this is a bag that you like and you want, if you want the original Strawberry bag, but you don't want to spend full price, shop sales. I know Nordstrom carries these bags and they run sales sometimes. You can also look on places like eBay, or even Poshmark for a slightly used bag. I did find something on Amazon. It's not an exact dupe of this bag, but if you want an extremely affordable option that just kind of has the same feel with the crossbody strap and the little the handles on the bag as well. There is a bag, and I can put this in the show notes. It's called a shoulder tote by Cosifer, and it comes in black vegan leather, and it's $23.99. So
Whoa,
if you really
hey,
want to steal,
that's more
you
in
know,
my budget.
yeah, I mean, it kind of gives that same look and feel of the sleek structured bag, but at a much lower price point. Number three is to give a handmade gift. We know that Kate has been known to do this in the past. One Christmas, she actually handmade fishing flies for Prince Philip. And another year, she made homemade strawberry jam and plum preserves for members of the royal family. So I thought that was really cute. And we know when you give gifts during the holidays, it's really the thought that counts. And making a gift really adds that added special touch. It doesn't have to be an expensive gift to be special. It can be something that you put your own work into, whether you like to sew or cross stitch or you like to cook. I definitely encourage everyone to get creative and think about a homemade gift this year. All right, so number 4, this one is a fun one. I definitely recommend a gag gift for the holidays. And I'm sure we'll talk about this next week, Rachel, but we know the Royals every year have a tradition of giving silly gag gifts.
Yep.
I guess when you get to that level of wealth, you don't, there's not really
You
much
get
that
the
you need.
woman that has everything.
Right. Yeah. So they have a tradition, and I think the goal there is to spend as little as possible, but get as many laughs as possible. So some examples of royal gag gifts that have been given in the past. Is one year Kate gave Harry a grow your own girlfriend kit. That was obviously before Meghan was.
Meghan,
Yeah.
obviously.
And then one year, Princess Anne actually gave Charles a leather toilet seat.
Oh my gosh.
I thought it was so funny because apparently it's reported that he loved it so much, he actually still brings it with him when he travels to use.
Wow. You can't say about this family that they don't have a good sense of humor. You can't say that.
Definitely, definitely. But yeah, definitely get creative, look online. I actually checked Etsy. They have some fun kind of royal gag gifts. I saw a face mask with looks like the bottom half of Queen Elizabeth's face. And that was a really funny option, I thought.
Love it.
Okay, so number 5 is a really great classic gift, but it's also a little bit of a splurge. Number 5 is a Barbour jacket. So these jackets are super classic. They are not going to go out of style. You can imagine the royal family out, in the field shooting their guns or hunting, wearing these quilted or waxed field jackets. We actually know that Her Majesty the Queen, Prince Philip, and Prince Charles have all awarded this brand a royal warrant, which means Barbour can actually advertise the fact that they supply their jackets to the royal family. So these jackets do range a pretty good bit in price. I would say on average anywhere from $250 to $500 plus, depending on the different features that you want the jacket to have. But if you do want to shop a lower price point than that, you can shop places like J. Crew or Banana Republic or even Amazon. They have really great dupes that give you that same look and feel of the Barbour jacket. Okay, so number 6 is anything from the brand Smithson. So if you're not familiar with Smithson, they are a high-end British brand of paper and leather goods. They sell high-quality stationery, planners, leather accessories like card and passport holders and briefcases and weekend bags. And they also actually supply the Queen's stationery and leather goods for Philip. I think Charles also actually uses them for his office supplies as well. But this is a luxury brand, so most of their items are pretty pricey. I shopped the website for 2 different options for you. If you want to just give someone a small gift and you want it to be from Smithson, they do have a box of 10 stationery cards for $35 on their website. You do have to pay for shipping, but they do ship to the US. And then I also found, this is a little bit more expensive, but a gorgeous wallet in the HRH blue, like Elizabeth Holmes' book. That is $385. So more of a splurge, but just a classic, really nice wallet that you would definitely have for a long time. So number 7 is something cashmere. Cashmere is so classic, it does not go out of style. And the reason this item made the list is because for Diana's first Christmas with the royal family, she actually missed the memo of the gag gift tradition.
God love her.
And she gifted everyone cashmere sweaters and mohair scarves. So, I can't imagine how awkward that moment might have been for her. But it's so Diana. I mean, a cashmere sweater is just classic. So, I mean, you really can't go wrong with that.
Nobody bothered to give her that memo. God love her.
I mean, I would take the cashmere sweater. I would be perfect
Yeah. Heck
with
yeah.
that. So item number 8 is the Beauty Sleep Elixir by Beauty Skincare. So this is a clean, natural face oil. It contains 14 plant-based oils that fight inflammation and the breakdown of collagen, and they promote hydration in your skin. Kate was actually given a bottle of this oil one year by a member of her staff, and she reportedly still uses it. And she loved it so much, she gave a bottle to Meghan Markle, who also still uses it regularly.
Hmm.
So this oil retails for $70 a bottle. So, I mean, I think this would be a really great gift on its own, or you could pair it with some organic washcloths, or some towels for the bathroom or something. I think that would be a really great gift.
If anybody's listening, I would like this. So you've been told.
Number 9 is Kate's gold initial necklace.
Oh, I love this one.
Yes, we've seen her wear it several times this year. It's got the 3 gold discs, and each one has the first initial of each of her kids' names. So the actual one that Kate wears is by Daniela Draper and retails for over $1,000. So if you want the original and you want to splurge on it, there you go. If you don't want to spend that much, I definitely recommend doing a Google search for a dupe. You can find very similar styles on Etsy, or the website Mark and Graham. They have disc necklaces as well. And I mean, these are like under $100, some under 50. So much more affordable if the $1,000 price point is not quite in budget. All right, and number 10, the last item on our list is something from the Buckingham Palace gift shop. So, I mean, this is really for people who just love commemorative items to do with the royal family. The Buckingham Palace gift shop, actually, you can purchase online and they ship their items worldwide. So there are tons of pages online of the gift shop, and you could dig around all day looking for gifts. But I found a few items that I'll share on here as recommendations. The first one is the blue miniature teapot ornament. It retails for $33. Keep in mind you do have to pay shipping, but it would be a really cute little ornament to give someone to hang on their tree or to include with another gift. It's really, really pretty. And then if you have someone who is a tea drinker and would appreciate a full-size teapot, they have the coat of arms 6-cup teapot, which retails for about $180. And they also have the longest reigning monarch commemorative teapot, which retails for around $200. Both of these are made with English bone china and finished with 22 karat gold. So they are absolutely beautiful. They had a range of teapots, Rachel, that some of them were, I mean, like $1,000, like
Oh my
really
gosh.
expensive. But these were on the lower end and they were still incredibly beautiful and would be such a nice gift that you could pair with a box of English breakfast tea, and give to someone who would really appreciate something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other just kind of a fun item they had on their website were corgi socks. So we know the queen is famous for her corgis, and you can actually grab a pair of socks on their website for $20. So just kind of a fun, maybe stocking stuffer or silly gift to give someone.
I'm really glad that you did this gift guide at the beginning of December, because I was just thinking if you wanted to get something from the Buckingham Palace gift shop, it might take a minute to ship. And
Yeah.
so if get on this, if you want something from the UK, get on this now so it's here by the 25th, especially with COVID.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I mean, we're already seeing shipping delays. I mean, if you're going to get something like that, I would say order it this week.
Yes.
So I have one final bonus item that I threw on here for fun. This is a gift idea for anyone who wants to give maybe just like a family gift. If you're not gifting to every individual person, but you want to give one item for the whole family, my royally inspired recommendation here is a pizza stone.
I love this.
Yeah, so the Cambridges are really hands-on in the kitchen, and Kate's revealed that her kids like helping out with meals. They enjoy making their own personal pizzas and choosing toppings that each one of them loves. So Pizza Stone is just a great family gift that everyone can enjoy together. And I thought, you could package this with a nice bottle of olive oil or an Italian spice mix, or even wrap it up with a monogram tea towel or something like that. There are so many options with a pizza stone, and I think that's something that people will really, really use, especially if people are staying home more these days. You want to get creative in the kitchen and do something fun as a family.
That's a fantastic gift guide. And we're going to put all of these in the show notes, right?
Yeah, we'll link everything that we can. And that wraps up our gift guide. So
Oh, I love it. Okay, so now all of you know exactly what to get me for Christmas. There's no questions anymore. Just anything off that list, especially the skincare stuff, because your girl is not getting any younger. I just turned 34. So that was a fantastic gift guide, Jessica. That was awesome. And I'm glad that we did it this early. We're recording this on November 30th, so tomorrow is December. So when we post this episode this week, get on this if you want the stuff from the UK. And when you do get these products, let us know how you like them. So
yeah, and I hope I provided something at price points for everyone. I mean, we don't all have the same budgets, and we all have a variety of different people in our lives that we want to gift for. I think most of these things err a little more toward your gal pals or ladies in the family, but hopefully there's something on this list that
I love it. Well,
all of our listeners.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into episode 2 of Podcast Royal. Many more to come. Follow us on Instagram at Podcast Royal. Email us at hellopodcastroyal@gmail.com. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We'll see you next week with hopefully some more upbeat news. And welcome to December, everyone. Bye.
Bye.